Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to go over using CSS Sprites to make a little navigation menu in Dreamweaver. And I've got CS5 here, and I've got a new document open, a new web page open. Haven't even saved it yet, so let me go ahead and take a second to do that. I'll just do File, Save As, and I'll call this Sprites Menu.html. And I think I'm going to do some internal styles as opposed to an external style sheet, just so this is kind of all self-contained onto one page. Now I've already got a little menu that I'm going to play around with, and I'll kind of show it to you right up there. Wait a second, there we go. So I'm going to create a little navigation menu out of using this graphic as the basis. And basically I want to show the top half images, and when a person hovers over, it's going to change over to the bottom half. And you can do this with a lot of images. In fact, the navigation over at Apple site uses the exact same technique. Their navigation menu icons just look a little bit fancier than mine. So I've got these four faces, and I just want to change them on hover. Now to create this, I'm going to use a bulleted list. So I'm going to go ahead and create a bulleted list, just clicking on the unordered list button on my properties panel. And let's see, I've got face 1, face 2, face 3, and face 4. So I've got a bulleted list. And I want each of these to be a hyperlink because I expect to use it as a navigation menu. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all of the text here. And for demo purposes, I'm just going to put a pound sign as my hyperlink. So basically it's going to behave like a hyperlink, but it's going to be non-functioning. And I'm going to do that for each of these. Just making them into a hyperlink. Of course, in real life, these would link over to your About page or your social network sites. Okay, so I've got 4 hyperlinks in here now. Now, because each of my 4 buttons is unique, I've got a unique face, I need to uniquely identify each of these anchor tags. And there's a couple ways I can do that. There's a fast way. I could just jump over to code view, and I could go to each of these, and I could type in ID equals face 1. I could do ID equals face 2, ID equals face 3. In design view, I can select the anchor tag, and then in my properties panel I can type in face 2. And I'll take care of face 3. Face 3, and if I go back to code view, basically it's just popping in those IDs for me, and I'll do the last one here manually. ID equals face 4. I can't spell the word face tonight. Okay, so each of my 4 hyperlinks is uniquely identified within the list item. Okay, so I want to make this look less like a bulleted list and more like a cool little navigation menu. And this is going to involve using background positions for my anchors, and then more importantly, positioning those background images. So I'm going to get to work. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new CSS rule. And the first one I'm going to do is just going to be for my unordered list, just so we can visualize it a little bit better. And I'll do a tag selector for that. For my unordered list. Let's get this organized here. And the only thing I'm going to do with my unordered list is I'm going to put a border on it. And the border is just going to be as a visual aid for the short term. So I'll do a solid, thin, red border. So now I can see where my unordered list is. I also want to kind of make my bulleted list look less like a bulleted list. So I'm going to create a new rule. Tag selector, type selector for my list items. And for my list items, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my list items, I'm not going to give them a border, but I will do this. I'm going to go to list, and I'll do list style type none. And when I apply, that gets rid of the little bullet items there. Okay, so I definitely want to take care of that. You know, I think I will put a border on just briefly here. So I'll do a solid, thin blue border, just so we can kind of see this. And then I can go over to my box category, and I'll put a little bit of margin on all of my list items. I got a little bit of margin on there now, just so we can kind of visualize them a little bit better. And I'd also like to set their width and their height, but I'm going to take care of that in just a moment. So I'll go ahead and just click OK for now. So this is how my list is looking. And you can see that I've got a little bit more space over here on the left than I do on the right. And that's because there's some default margin when you work with lists. So I'm going to create a quick reset rule. So I'm going to create a new CSS rule. I'll use the compound selector, use an asterisk for my selector, and then I'm going to set under the box category paddings to 0 and margins to 0. Then I'll click OK. That gets rid of all default margin and padding. And over on my styles panel on the right, I'm going to take that little reset rule selector and I'm going to put it at the top. I want my reset rule to be at the very top. Okay, so now I can see things are starting to come together here. I want to start formatting my list items to better contain each of these little buttons, and my anchors for that matter too. So I'm going to have anchors in my list items, but I want really my anchors and list items to be the same shape and size. So I do need to know a little bit about my image. I'm going to go ahead and press my F12 key. That'll encourage me to save, and it'll do a little preview. Let me just drag this over to my recording side. And this is how my web page is currently looking in Chrome. And I've got my image up here, and I just want to learn a little bit about this image. I'm going to just go and inspect my element here. And it's kind of below my recording screen, so you're going to have to trust me on this one. But my total image here is 219 pixels wide and 108 pixels tall. And I want to know that. I can tell you that basically these little squares are about 50 pixels by 50 pixels because I just made this in Illustrator a second before starting this recording. So I've got these little 50 by 50 pixel objects. So that's what I want to work with, and I can adjust within that. Back over to Dreamweaver. So I'm going to go to my list items again. And in the box category, I'm going to make them 50 by 50. I might have to tweak this a little bit, but that's a good enough start. So now I can see my list items are 50 by 50, and they're making a nice little vertical orientation. Okay? And whether it's vertical or horizontal doesn't really matter. If I want them to be horizontal, that's pretty easy. I can go back to my list items, box category, and I can do a float left, and that'll get my menu items, my list items side by side. So I'll go with that for now. I want to start manipulating the anchor tags, and remember, each of my anchor tags is uniquely identified, and I can see that down here in my tag selector. I've got face 1, face 2, face 3, oh, where it is? There it is, face 3, and face 4. So I've got these unique anchor tags, but there's something that all anchor tags have in common, at least my 4 anchor tags. They're all going to use the same background image. So I'm going to create a rule. I'll do a compound, and this is going to be list item space A. All the anchors that are within list items, I'm going to set them all to some common characteristics. They're all going to have the same background image, which for me is in my images folder, and it's my little sprites, my sprite menu, my little faces there. Click OK. Oh, it shows me there, 219 by 108. So they all have the same background image. And I'm going to head over to the block category, and I want to display my anchor tags as block elements. I want my anchor tags to behave like block elements so I can set their width and their height, and they'll behave better like buttons that way too. So I've got display block, and I'll head over to the box, and I'm going to set their width and height to be 50 by 50. And I think that's pretty good, so I'll just click OK from there. And I can start to see how these things are going to load up. That's looking pretty good. I might need to make them a little bit bigger, but I also need to reposition my first one. So let me go ahead and zoom in a bit so I can see this. So it's a little bit blurry for you, and I'm kind of ignoring the text right now, so don't worry too much about that. But I'm looking, and I want to get these positioned a little bit better. But now I have to start working with each individual anchor tag. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new rule. Actually, I can click on this first, anchor face. So I'm using my tag selector to select what I want, creating a new CSS rule, and I'm going to manipulate face 1. Okay. Now face 1 is an anchor tag, and it's already got the background image that I want, so I'm going to head over to background position. And if I do a positive number for background position X and hit apply, the graphic moves more to the right. If I do actually that wasn't a really good, let me do 10 and 0 and then apply, and then you'll see it's a little bit clearer. So I'm moving just to the right with 10. And if I do negative 10, it's moving over to the left. I don't want to keep it at 0 because it looks like I've got a little bit of a gap there. So I think I'm going to do like a -1, hit apply, see how that looks. Now the pinkish colored border is just touching the inside. That looks good. And for the top, very similar. If I do a positive number for Y, it's going to move my background image down. See, it pushes it down. By the way, you're seeing it tile or repeat. That's why it looks like you see the darker shape up at the top. And if I do -10, it pushes it up. Okay, so I'm going to try -1 here and hit apply, and that looks like it's going to work for me. And I can see based on this position, I do need to make my anchors a little bit wider. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to click OK, go to my anchor tags, and currently under box they're at 50 by 50. I'm going to try 52 by 52, and I'll hit apply. See how that looks. And I'm still being confined by my list item, so no problem. I'll click OK, go to my list item, and I'll make those 52 by 52 and hit apply. And it's starting to look a little bit better. You might be able to argue I could probably go to 53, but I think I'm going to leave it there for now. Good enough for tonight. So that's going to be my new sizing there, 52 by 52. So there's my first face image. Now I got to reposition my little, that's the happy face one. Now I got to do the next one, which is going to be the frowny face. So this is going to be in my face 2. So I'll go ahead and create a rule for this one. And really I'm just going to the background position. Now the up and down is going to be pretty much the same. So it's going to be a -1. The X will be different. So I'm going to try like -55, hit apply, and that looks pretty good. Maybe -56. There we go. Now it looks like it's lined up pretty well, so I'm good with that one. So I did -56X and a -1Y. I'm going to go to face 3, position that one. I'm going to create a new CSS rule for face 3. Go to my background and position. The up and down is still going to be -1, no problem there. And for this one I'll try -106. Let's see how that looks. Ooh, not quite there. So I need to go a little bit more. How about a -110? Apply. A little bit more. 111. Looks good. Click OK. Last one is face 4. Create a new CSS rule for face 4. Background position, -1 for the Y, and for the X, let's see, can I see them both here at the same time? Let me move that off to the side. You won't really be able to see that as well. But I'll do, I'll start off with a -200. Oop, a little bit more to go. Actually, that was a little bit too much. That was a little bit too much there. So let me back this out to about 150. $170. A little too far. 65. Looks like 166 will take care of it. There we go. So all that's lined up nice and neat. So now I've got my menu coming along, and if I press my F12 key, save my changes, it'll go back into Chrome here. Here's my navigation menu. So I've got each of the individual faces displaying exactly where I want them to. So now I'm going to affect the hover status of these images. So pretty easy. I've got I'm just going to put these in order, not that it's too critical, just so it makes more sense to me. Face 1, Face 2, Face 3, and Face 4. Let's drag this down a little bit so I can see the properties. Okay, and so I'm going to work on Face 4 first. That was the last one I did. It was -166px and a -1px. The negative 166 is actually going to stay the same, and I'll just be adjusting the Y on hover. So I've got this. I'm going to create a new CSS rule, but this time I'm going to put the pseudo class :hover, and I think I'll actually need to be on the compound category. :hover. So the hover state of my face4 anchor tag. So I'll click OK there. And I'll head over to background, and I know the X is a negative 166, and for the Y I'm going to have to kind of guess at it, but I'll try negative 54. That'll negative will shift it up, and that's what I want. So I'm going to click OK here, and to test this out I'm going to go to live view. There it is, took a second, and then you notice when I hover over, see, it kind of pops just a little bit. So I guessed really close, but not as precise as I would like. So it looks like I need to shift it up a little bit higher. So I'll just head over to my face4 hover, background, and instead of negative 54, maybe negative 55 will do the trick. And I'll click OK. Turn off live view. Actually, I think that was still OK. Go back to live view. There we go, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the color to shift, but I don't want to see the little face hopping up and down. So that's going to be useful information. It's a negative 55 pixels on the Y for that, and I'm going to kind of repeat that process for the other faces. So I can turn off live view, and face 3 was negative 111. So I'm going to create a new rule, compound, face3 : hover, background position, X is negative 111, and the Y was negative 55. Click OK. Not even going to test that one. I'm feeling pretty confident. Face 2 was before negative 56, so I'm going to create a new rule, compound, # face 2 : hover, hover state of face 2. The background positioning is going to be negative 56. I think I've already forgotten. I think it was negative 56, and then I want to do negative 55 for the Y. Click OK. So I'm kind of curious, so let me test this one out. I'll jump over to live code. Oops, I'm sorry, not live code, live view. Turn back to design, and that's what I'm looking for. So it looks like buttons 2, 3, and 4 are behaving how I want, so that's pretty good. So the only thing left is face 1, and that should be one of the easier ones. Okay, so face 1, that was just negative 1, negative 1, so I'll just create a new rule, compound, for the hover state of face 1. Background position, the X is going to stay negative 1, and the Y will be negative 55. And I'll click OK. Things are looking good. Back over to live view, and now all 4 menu buttons are doing what I want. I'm going to head back over to my list items. I'm going to get rid of the border. So that border is gone. So they still have the nice little action there. And I want to kind of hide my text. Now the best way to go about hiding my text, I think, is what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the text for each link, and I'm going to make it italics, add emphasis. So I'll just click my little I there. So I'm double clicking the text, making it emphasized, double clicking text, making it emphasized, and now I'm going to create a new rule for, I'll do a compound category, list item space A space EM. So whenever I have an emphasis inside of an anchor inside of a list item, how do I know that? Let me show you this. Let me just cancel real quick. Any one of these, look at my tag selector. Emphasis in an anchor in a list item. If I looked at code view, emphasis is within an anchor, which is within a list item. Okay, so back on design view, create a new rule, compound, list item space A space EM. I'll click OK. I'm going to head over to the block category and choose display none. Click OK. So my text isn't there anymore, but If I go to live view, it's still a hyperlink. It's still a navigational menu. The anchor tag is still there, but the text within the anchor tag is not displaying. So now I've got my menu and it's working pretty well. The only thing left really, let me just turn live view off. I'm going to get rid of that original image. I don't need that anymore. And I'm going to reduce the width of my unordered list. Okay, my unordered list is visible with this red line up there, and I'm going to get rid of that red border in just a second. But let me head over to box, and I'm just going to narrow down my width. I'll try 290 pixels. Hit apply. That's pretty good. 275. Apply. That's pretty good. If I go too low, like 250, oops, not low enough. If I go 240, it'll start to wrap around and push one of my menu items out of place, and I don't want that to happen. So let me just kind of adjust. I want to go small as I can. Get them all to fit. And that looks pretty good there. I'll just call it 250 so I have a nice, neat number. Okay, so now my unordered list is just big enough to accommodate my 4 little buttons. And while I'm here, I'll go to the margin, and I'm going to set the left margin to auto and the right margin to auto. Hit OK. Now it's centered on the page. Let me zoom out to 100% so we can see it a little bit better. And there's live view, so I can see that working. Let me get rid of that border. That's my unordered list. I'm just going to get rid of that thin, solid red border. So there's my little nav menu. Let me press F12, save changes, check it out in Chrome. And here's my CSS Sprite navigation menu in Google Chrome. So that's how you use CSS Sprites. And the cool thing about this is it's one graphic that's loaded into your browser's cache with one HTTP request. And I'm just repositioning that background image whenever I hover over a particular link. So there's my little version right there. And of course, Apple.com has a similar but fancier version up on there. Same exact concept. Okay, so have fun making your CSS sprites.